Did that experience teach you about acting?
Well, one thing it taught me was that it was really good to be in the theater because you just keep going. Because in those days, they taped the show, but unless the scenery fell over on you, it was going out like it was live. And so it was really good. And back in those days, they had theater actors doing it. It's not like nowadays where they cast a lot of pretty young kids. There were pretty people on there, but it was mostly, theater actors that worked in New York. And so, like when I was doing Search, Larry Haynes was on it. He was doing Promises at night. Joel Silver was on it, and he was doing Shenandoah at night. Different people. We had Andrea McCardle on. She finally had to leave the show because she was doing Annie. It's like people were doing a lot of theater, and the soap opera was what paid for the house in the country. And for some of us starting out, it was a real good foothold into New York where you could actually have a paying gig and then go out on other auditions and things.
What was New York like then?
New York in the 70s. Anybody live in New York in the 70s?
Yeah.
Okay. New York in the 70s was fabulous. It was so creative. There was so much going on in music, in dance, in theater. Now they're doing revivals of all the things that were created in the 70s. But a lot of it was just, it was such a creative time to be there. I'm a dance fanatic. There was so much great dance going on then, so much new music, just all kinds of different things. So, I lived across the street from Lincoln Center because I'm a ballet fanatic. And, you'd see Gelsey Kirkland live in my building, Pierre Boulez, who was the conductor at the time, lived in my building. And, you would see people on the street all the time. John Lennon lived near me. And I remember standing in the health food store one day listening to John Lennon have a discussion on music theory with George Balanchine, who was the head of City Ballet and one of Diaghilev's last proteges. And so it was just always interesting. I went to Studio 54 a few times, and I would go, but I had to work, so I couldn't stay late like all the crazy people. So, Halston and Liza would be trying to get me to go in the VIP room, but I know that was where all the weird sex and drugs went on. So I was like, no, I'll just stay out here and dance.
I'd go.
And so, but I was always leaving early, so everybody would always kid me that I was leaving early, but I was raised to be a professional, and I had a job, and I had to get up in the morning. You don't come dragging in from a club. So one night I'm leaving early. No, there was a time. There were a few of us left. Not too many. I was leaving early one night, and I couldn't get a cab, and I hear this really nice voice behind me say, "Where are you going? I'll give you a lift." And it was Andy Warhol. So I gave me a lift, and we became buddies, And I was always one of my big regrets is like one time in the 80s when I'd gone into New York and I was at this sort of avant-garde ballet kind of thing and party, and Andy was there, and he came over after and said, "Morgan, all these years, why have I never painted you?" And I said, "I don't know, honey, why haven't you?" So he said, next time you come into town, call me, I want to paint you. I said, "Great." Well, 3 weeks later, they went into the hospital and they killed him. The gallbladder operation gone bad. But he was such a lovely, you would just meet people like that all the time in New York, just on the street, just because I go places and do crazy shit. And I'm out there. I'm always going out, and I like to meet interesting people.
Before we continue